Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the fifth and final session of the 2021 Summer Dharmathon. My name is David Oshiro and I'm a member of the Kamuela Hongwanji mission located in South Kohala of the Big Island. The presentation of the past 4 nights have absolutely shown that there is a rich resource of Dharma teachings and ideas in our own Nimbutsu Sanghas. Many perspectives of the theme, building healthy Sanghas, nurturing empathy and respect, have been gratefully shared and received. This theme is so appropriate for the global situations we are in now. Tonight, we conclude the 2021 Summer Dharmathon series with Reverend Uica Hasebe and David Fujimoto. If you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to leave a comment in the chat box and we will pass it on to the speaker. I would now like to introduce the first speaker of the evening, Reverend Uica Hasebe, who is currently an associate minister at the Honpa Hongwanji Hawaii Betsuin. Her hometown, Toyama, Japan, is known for the beautiful Japan Alps, which has plenty of snow and delicious seafood, especially the yellowfin tuna and the fresh shrimp. Her temple back home was in the middle of rice paddies. Our new minister in Kamuela, Reverend Yamagishi, is also from Toyama. Since she was young, she always thought that she would receive her Tokudo ordination and become a minister in the future. Reverend Hasebe graduated from Ryokoku University, ordained in the year 2004, and received her Kyoshi certificate in the year 2007. Reverend Hasebe first served at the Hawaii Betsuin from February 2008 to November 2009. Then she served at the Hilo Betsuin for 3 years before going back to Japan to take care of her family. She is happy to be back in Hawaii and has rejoined the Hawaii Betsuin as of summer 2014. Reverend Hasebe, welcome to the 2021 Summer Dharmathon. Please share your Dharma message.
Okay. At the beginning of my message, I would like to read the letter. I would like to read the sentences from the notes on one's calling and many callings. So let us together place our hand in Gassho. As foolish beings, we are full of ignorance and blind passions. Our desires are countless, and anger, wrath, jealousy, and envy are overwhelming, arising without pause. To the very last moment of life, they do not cease or disappear or exhaust themselves. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, Namanda, Namanda. Thank you very much. And then thank you very much, Mr. Oshiro, for a nice introduction. And then again, my name is Uica Hasebe, and I am currently serving as an associate minister of Honpa Hongwanji Hawaii Betsin in Honolulu. Thank you very much to the Buddhist Study Center, Reverend Kevin, Carrie, and the BSc program committee. And also thank you for all of you who joined with me tonight. Today's theme, and also for the 2021 slogan for Honpa Hongwanji Mission of Hawaii, is building healthy sanghas, nurturing empathy and respect. Today, I would like to break this topic into two segments. First is building healthy sanghas, and second part is nurturing empathy and respect. When I first read this theme, I questioned myself. What does it mean, healthy Sangha? Is there any Sangha which is not healthy or healthier compared to the other? So I listed out what Sangha sounds healthy to me. And if you have any idea or your image of the healthy Sangha, please, I don't know, it's okay, but if you can, please share with the, write in the chat box. So in both spiritual as well as the worldly mean, I think healthy Sangha to me is people appreciate the Buddha Dharma, kind and gentle atmosphere. People try to support and help each other. People utter and hear the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu. People connected through Buddha Dharma. So safe environment, feeling of being welcomed. Probably we have various views of what healthy Sangha look like. But as much as we think about healthy Sangha, we can't ignore that we sometimes encounter anger, jealous, suffering, and pain within our Sangha too. Not only our Sangha, but to be honest, it is always happening even within my family. I was born and raised in the temple family, and I think I can say that it is a small Sangha. We all appreciate, my family, we all appreciate Buddha Dharma and then the teachings. But do you think my family is kind and gentle to each other all the time? Maybe sometime when I'm happy. So we're supposed to be kind and gentle to each other all the time, but unfortunately, we are not. I often have fights with my brother, and he always claimed that I'm too bossy. And then maybe that is true, and I can accept that. My mother and then grandmother sometimes have a quarrel or arguments. Their eyes really like a death to each other when they fight, yeah? And I am glad my mom and grandma doesn't understand the English, otherwise I'll be scolded by them. So these things happens all over and all the time. It can be started as small as a family, from temple Sangha, our community, and to the country level. I would like to share one story today, which was written in the BDK, the Teaching of the Buddha, page 457. So give me a few seconds and I like to share the screen. Okay. Once, there was a king named Calamity, whose country was conquered by the neighboring warlike king named Brahmadatta. King Calamity, after hiding with his wife and son for a time, was captured, but unfortunately his son, the prince, could escape. The prince tried to find some way of saving his father, but in vain. On the day of his father's execution, the prince in disguise made his way into the execution ground, where he could do nothing but watching in mortification the death of his ill-fated father. The father noticed his son in the crowd and muttered as if talking to himself, "Do not search for a long time. Do not act hastily. Resentment can be calmed only by forgetting it." Afterward, the prince sought after some way of revenge for a long time. At last, he was employed as an attendant in the Brahmadatta's palace and came to win the king's favor. On a day when the king went hunting, the prince sought some opportunity for revenge. The prince was able to lead his master into a lonely place, and the king, being very wary, fell asleep with his head on the lap of the prince. So fully had he come to trust the prince. The prince drew his dagger and placed it at the king's throat, but then hesitated. The words his father had expressed at the moment of his execution flashed into his mind, and although he tried again, he could not kill the king. Suddenly, the king awoke and told the prince that he had had a bad dream in which the son of King Calamity was trying to kill him. The prince flourished the dagger in his hand, hastily grasped the king, and identifying himself as the son of King Calamity, declared that the time had finally come for him to avenge his father. Yet he could not do so. And suddenly he cast his dagger down and fell in the knees in front of the king. When the king heard the prince's story and the final word of his father, he was very impressed and apologized to the prince. Later, he restored the former kingdom to the prince, and their two countries came to live in friendship for a long time. The dying word of King Calamity, do not search for a long time, means the resentment should not be cherished for long. And do not act hastily means the friendship should not be broken hastily. In the fellowship of Buddhahood, brotherhood, that is based on the harmony of right teaching, every member should always appreciate the spirit of this story. End of story. Thank you very much for watching the slide. As I read this story, one sentence really struck me, which is the last sentence. The teaching said, every member should always appreciate the spirit of this story. As I read this sentence, it said, we should always appreciate this story, which means we always have this kind of problem within our Sangha, one after another, and probably it never ceases. That is why this story concludes with the word, should always appreciate, because it always happens since Shakyamuni Buddha's era. It never finishes as happily ever after. At the moment, we may have peace and serenity, but anger, jealous, would always appear within our Sangha and community. It does not mean that we agree or accept as it is. I believe it is always should be understood as the time to reflect myself, time to make best possible decision, and we may fail, but this is the time to practice. Our former Gomonshu Koshin Otani, Gomonshu-sama, clearly stated in his book, The Buddha's Wish for the World, that we all like to put ourselves first. That is true. When we think about our nature, there's always ego, self-centeredness, greed, anger, and ignorance. That is what Shinran Shonin sincerely looked into it. It must be a scary journey to deeply endeavor one's heart, but it must be bright and steadfast journey as well, because the journey was always illuminated by the great light and the wisdom. This is how I see the healthy Sangha. Our Sangha may contain many problems or issues, and we may have to encounter unexpected sadness or pain. But it is continuous journey guided by Amida Buddha. Keep asking questions by ourselves. Keep learning from the teaching. Keep learning from each other. Both successes and failures are important. Sangha moves dynamically. It never ceases, never stays still, and it keeps changing its form and shape, which include the purity and the dirtiness. Before I really think about the healthy Sangha, I always think the healthy, ideal Sangha is what I mentioned at the beginning. It may be true, but I think Sangha is not only that. There must be great power arise within it, and the Sangha is powerful and dynamic, organic thing. Now, I would like to share my thought about the nurturing empathy and the respect. Please bear with me so another short time. When I think about nurturing empathy and respect, I question myself how I can nurture empathy and respect within me. It is very, very difficult questions. How do you nurture your empathy and respect? I don't know the answer, and I think answer can be varied, but I think it is important to open our heart and ears to others. To be honest, I sometimes have to force to do so because it is so comfortable to close my heart and ears. But okay, so and one I wanna talk about a little more, yeah. And then one of my hobby is I don't know that is good to mention, but I love Twitter. Does any of you doing Twitter? And I should have included Twitter as my hobby, but I didn't tell Mr. Osho. But I always enjoy like reading, people's posting, yeah. And one day I was reading someone's post, and she wrote like that. When I was upset about women's rights in the present world, I approached my husband. He understood that I wanted to talk and listened calmly and sincerely with a smile on his face. Just to be clear, I told him, please don't forget, you can be calm only because you are a man and currently you are not affected by these things. I could see by the look on his face that the word hit him hard. Then he began to enumerate all the unpleasant and unfair experience he had been through. And then he finally said to me, that is true. Because you're a woman and you experience these things all the time. When I first read this post, at the instant, I remember about the Black Lives Matter movement. When I reflect about when the Black Lives Matter movement arose, was I like this husband in the post? It means I try to understand the situation and history sincerely. I try to calculate the situation logically, but have I ever really tried to understand actual sadness, what African American people has been through? Probably I am never able to understand completely, but at least I have to question myself. Did I try to understand their sadness and their feelings sincerely? I realized that it is not just phenomena or protesting. There is tear, fear, and cries of people take shape and are manifested as a movement. After that, I questioned myself again, like the husband in the Twitter's post. Have I ever been treated unfairly in my life? Have you ever been treated unfairly in your life? Have you ever felt that your right is threatened with no reasons? Have you humiliated in front of people? Probably we all experience those in some extent, and we know how we feel. It made us sad, discouraged, hurt our pride and honor, and sometimes even take our lives. Not only limited to this Black Lives Matter movement, our world is consisted by various kinds of people, belief, languages, cultures, political parties, and religions. We only can see things through our eyes and through our experience. Of course, it is very difficult to understand others. How can we nurture empathy and respect to each other? How can we connect to each other? How can we establish the mutual respect? The world is needed them more than ever, and our Sangha and the Buddha's teaching must have a great value to share with the community and the world. It is so profound and true. Buddha said that we were born alone, we die alone, we come alone, and we leave alone. No one can be born together and die together with anyone other than oneself. No matter how much we love and care to each other, the time will come when we have to let their hands go. In that way, we are all the same. We all born and die alone. Maybe we are so much different in so many ways, but that is the common thing we all can share. By understanding that we are all alone and there is no exception, this reality will bring us together. Realizing that we are all alone does not separate us, but it connects us. By realizing that he or she is alone facing his or her life in his or her particular situation, just like me, as I live my life alone, facing my problems in my particular situation. That understanding of being alone brings us together even stronger. By learning that as I cry for the sorrow of life, he is also cries. As I smile for the joy of a life, she also smiles too. Sangha is the gathering of such people. We see differently, we feel differently, we think differently, but we all treasure ourselves. We all have problems wants to be solved. We all have sadness and joy of life. We all come alone and leave this world alone. These people consist the Sangha. It is none other than me and you. And like the thread of the Nenju, like the golden chain, great compassion and wisdom may be visibly or invisibly, but connecting us deeply. Sangha, especially for Jodo Shinshu Sangha, it is a place for endeavoring oneself guided by Amida Buddha. By illuminating by the light of the Buddha, we can see our imperfectness and the dark part of ourselves. As I cried for pain, my fellow travelers also cries. Building healthy Sangha, nurturing empathy and respect, contains many kinds of human activities and aspects. I believe by knowing our imperfect self through this Jodo Shinshu teaching brings us together, connects us, and creates the active, tolerant, flexible, sincere, and gentle Sangha. By learning our ultimate loneliness, we realize the preciousness of a moment together. Every time we experience anger or jealous, we realize the powerfulness of a blind passion, bonno. But it is also tells us that Shinran Shonin's teaching is so true and so vivid and real to the present day, and then relevant to our daily lives. Every single joy or struggling is an opportunity to encounter Amida Buddha. I think as a conclusion, I think that the healthy Sangha, supported by the empathy and respect, is the constant realization of oneself and a continuous cultivation effort guided by Amida Buddha's great light and a great wisdom. So thank you very much for your kind attention. And then this concludes my message. As a conclusion, I like to recite the name of the Buddha. So if you're able to, please place your hands together in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reverend Hasebe. A very inspiring Dharma message. I don't know if we have any questions, but I do have a few questions to start off with. My first question is, from your own life and Buddhist experiences, can you relate some of your thoughts regarding empathy and respect that can build a healthy Sangha and world?
Thank you for your question. For the question, I think like I've been working as a Kaikyoshi minister for over 13 years. And like I was able to have a wonderful opportunity to meet a lot of people, and most of them is older than me. But most of them are so very kind and really genuine, and then really sincere people. And I was able to meet a lot of those people. But at the same time, I sometimes think, there must be a lot of suffering or sadness or pain in their life. And then they must know how loneliness or how heartbreaking experience, or must know the pain of life too. So that's why I always thought the people who experience the difficulty and sadness become really kind and gentle to others. So I think that's how I learned the respect and empathy from the member and people here. And it's always made me wish that I hope I can be like those, like those ladies and gentlemen, and then in the future. And then the path may be long, but I don't know if I can reach to that point. But that's how I feel that's how it transmitted to me, and then hopefully I can translate it to the next generation. I think that's how we can build the healthy Sangha to each other, by knowing that we all have sadness in our life. That's the I think important things to share. And then that's, I think, how we can create the empathy and the respect and then build the healthy Sangha. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question, probably related to the first question is, some people I think is naturally empathetic in nature, but, many of us need a little help to remember what empathy means and how we can cultivate our own empathy skills. I think you're going to agree with me that, this can be learned. So in a nutshell, can you summarize some quick hints in ways to build empathy, or to put oneself in someone's shoes?
Okay, thank you. I think that to cultivate the empathy and then respect is I always kind of think about that I really have to know my limit. There's so much of things I can do, and then no matter how much I try, there's always the line that I cannot cross. And then by knowing my limit, that teaches me that that I should be really humble and I appreciate that the teachings, yeah. So, and then as I think about there's always the line that I cannot cross, that kind of makes me encourage me try to understand the person. So, like I never be able to understand my friend's sadness completely, or even like when I lost my father, I was sad, but I was never able to understand my mother's sadness or my grandma or my grandpa's sadness. But that's the line that we are not able to cross. But but at the same, that will bond us together too. So I have my own sadness. They have their own sadness. We cannot really share it completely, but it is, but that's really makes me, that really kind of encourage us to try to understand each other sincerely or genuinely. I hope this answered the question.
Yes, you did. Thank you. We have a question from Art Kaufman. Hasebe Sensei, you seem to be saying that being part of a healthy Sangha and nurturing empathy and respect begin with ourselves. Is that correct?
Okay, one moment, yeah. You seems to be. We can let ourselves. In a way, I think to me, it's a yes and then no, because all the working, Jodo Shinshu, all the working comes from the Amida Buddha side, and then but not from our side. But it's never, I think, limited ourselves not to doing it. So even though there is a limit, but there is it does not prevent us to moving towards the goodness. But it's not like any goodness is not in me, but by reflecting Buddha's teaching, Amida's teaching, or illuminated by the great light of Amida, we see our imperfectness. By doing that, it's naturally moving us toward that direction. So that's how I see the healthy Sangha. the member of the healthy Sangha knows that we are all imperfect. And then not like to our power, we know we are imperfect because of the perfect existence as Amida, by illuminated by that perfect light, we see our imperfectness. And then it's naturally a joy or appreciation or the wish to move in the good direction arises within us, but it's never from our work or our effort. I hope this answers the question.
Thank you, Sensei.
Thank you.
I have a question. You
Hi.
know, wearing a face mask is a true sign of respect for for other, and you know, it is not an impingement on one's freedom. How do we respect someone who is not wearing a face mask? And what are ways to improve Sangha and community respect?
Okay. Thank you for the question. So wearing the mask and how we can address that the respect my social distancing. Yeah. Yeah, and then I think we can say like I don't know, like I don't know what everybody say, but I would say if my friend is too close to me, I would just say I want to keep my social distance, but we are still friends. That's that probably I would say, because that the but I believe like if we say like even to the stranger, it's not supposed to be only helping, I mean, the protecting me, supposed to be protecting that person who actually kind of standing close to me. So if we say like, well, maybe we better stay a little far away to each other for the social distance, I think we can, maybe I think we can say that to each other. But I don't know what, I kind of want everybody know how everybody thinks, but yeah, that's how I see, like, but people always happy to be respected. And I think it's okay, just say like, maybe we better keep the social distance at this time until COVID ceases.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you know, I guess you know, the COVID pandemic is always on the headlines, in the newspaper and the news on TV. You know, so I think I'm going to, you know, ask a little bit more questions in that area. You know, practicing empathy during our unfortunate global situations not only opens your mind to what others are experiencing, but it can also provide, you know, social connectiveness in our Sangha and community. You know, this can help to eliminate feelings of isolation and, you know, regulate your emotions in times of stress and anxiety. You know, this is a major problem, you know, the psychological part. And, you know, besides the devastating effects of the COVID virus. How do we accomplish this?
Especially this time, the COVID pandemic time. I agree with you. Sometimes we kind of feel disconnected, and then I always thought I'm all by myself and then doing things, and then because I feel really lonely and sad, and then sometimes when I depressed and then think about those I really feel my eyes are blinded, and then those a depression feeling happen sometime to me too. I don't know about everybody, but I really feel those feel depressed and then feel miserable, or feel all by myself. And then those time I try to do one thing is I as much as I can, I try to see what reality is. So am I truly alone? Am I truly by myself? And then that's I often ask myself. By doing so, it kind of makes my mind clear that I feel that I'm all alone, and then nobody helping me, nobody likes me, and then everybody hated me. But the truth is, there's not. But then when we feel stressed out and then sad, sometimes we think like that, I think. So in my case, I always question myself, Uica, are you really being hated by many people? Are you really being all by yourself and none of them helping you? But the answer is, the reality is no, because the help I am able to live in now. So it always helped me that the truth and then things happening in my mind, kind of those distinction oftentimes helps me. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from the audience. Sensei, thank you for your message, which I found profound and real, and I enjoyed it very much. Given that our Sangha is declining in numbers, do you think that a healthy Sangha is a growing Sangha?
I think it is always nice to grow, but it does not mean the not growing Sangha is unhealthy. I think it should be really I think Sangha should be moving, dynamically moving and then constantly kind of changing is, I think, healthy Sangha. And that change means it's not only, I always feel Sangha is like a pot in the pond or pot, yeah. So a lot of kind of organic thing or a lot of things in the pond, but if it stays still, it's just the water goes back bad and then rotten, yeah. So I think the healthy Sangha is a keep kind of water is keep circulating, and then a lot of things keep moving and changing that keep happening. I think that is the healthy Sangha. In a way, the number of the Sangha may not be immediately raised or maybe grow, but it does not also mean the it is not healthy too, yeah. So But if the Sangha is actively evolving, I think it's eventually reaching out to the outer world. I hope it's answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, we have another question that's kind of related to that. How do we encourage the next generation to continue nurturing the Sangha? There are so many distractions in our modern society.
For me, yeah, there is a lot of distractions in our modern society, and then like I cannot stop doing Twitters. But yeah, I think when I meet the young people, like Dharma school children, or you know, like people way much younger than me, I always feels like I want to make sure that they have a place to come back, and then this is the temple, and then this is the safe place. They can come here and then cry. They can come here and laugh. It is like I always feel like we are planting the seed for them to their heart. So, you know, like a seed may not be grow so fast, but eventually it's grow with the water and the sun. And then, so like we try to keep even like a little kind of time, I mean the little narrow strings, or maybe connection, but we kind of keep kind of connection together with them. And then I want really the children to feel that they can always come here and then cry and laugh. That's their home too, because that's what Amida Sama's place, home. So I really feel it is like a placing their seed in their heart, and then I always hope eventually when they're in problem or when they face the suffering of the life, like we all did, we all probably will do again, surely, that I always want them to remember this. There's always the Hongwanji, always the Buddha's teaching that they're always welcome to be back. So that's how I feel that about the next generation. I hope it's answered the question.
Thank you. We're kind of running out of time, so I got one final question. In every level of society, may it be family, Sangha, community, national, and international, the key to a happier and more successful world is the growth of compassion. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on this?
I think so, yeah. But I really have to but I always think Jodo Shinshu is not like a question about the others, but more like question myself. And then I always have to ask myself, and I don't know how we can nurture the compassion, but at the same time that something really connect us between human to human. And we may not have like a perfect compassion like Amida Buddha has to us, but there's always like we try to connect each other, and then people try to connect each other. So like the compassion is it is truly the key to prepare more, to move forward more world peace. Yeah. Oh, no time.
Mhm.
Sorry, ごめんなさい, kind of confusing answer. So
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Honpa Hongwanji Mission of Hawaii and the Buddhist Study Center for having the 2021 Summer Dharmathon. Special thank you goes to Reverend Kevin Kuniyuki, Carrie Wong, Carolyn Uchimura, the ministers and moderators from our Sangha. If you have further questions, please send it to the link posted. Sharon Nohara will be our next moderator, and the session will start at 7:35. Thank you very much for your participation.
thank you very much.
Welcome back to the final session of the Buddhist Study Center's 2021 Summer Dharmathon series. Tonight, we end the Dharmathon with a Dharma message from Reverend David Fujimoto, following the theme, Building Healthy Sanghas, Nurturing Empathy and Respect. As in the previous session, we ask that you enter any questions in the YouTube chat box. Your question will be answered at the end of Reverend Fujimoto's presentation. My name is Sharon Nohara, and I am your moderator for this evening. Reverend David Fujimoto was born in Honolulu, Hawaii. He graduated from Farrington High School, and he went on to get his bachelor's in psychology at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. David also has a master's in Buddhist studies, a degree in spirituality in healthcare, holistic peer counseling, and is currently attending the Clinical Pastoral Education International. Reverend David got his Tokudo ordination in 2007 and his Kyoshi ordination in 2010, with his Kaikyoshi title shortly after in 2011. His first assignment was to the Honpa Hongwanji Hilo Betsuhin as an associate minister. Later, he became the resident minister at Puna Hongwanji, while also overseeing Pahala Hongwanji and Alehu Hongwanji. He is currently the resident minister of Mililani Hongwanji, as well as the overseeing minister of Eva Hongwanji. He currently participates as a pilot program volunteer chaplain to nurses. I will now take this time to turn over the program to Reverend David Fujimoto.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Congratulations. You have all made it to the last night, and now you have to bear with this crazy, ignorant person's message, and then it's all over. But then again, it is Friday, so if you cut out, I don't mind. Okay, so first off, I'd like to thank Reverend Kevin and Carrie over at the Buddhist Study Center, and for all of you, and for joining the ministers and I over the past couple of days. So if this was the Olympics and I was in a swimming relay, I would be considered the anchor leg. Typically, this position is given to the fastest and most experienced person on the team. This person is responsible for making up ground if they are behind, or preserving the lead that is already in place by the previous swimmers. But trust me, tonight I am neither of that. I've swam anchors in many relays, and this experience is far more scarier and far more terrifying. But I do have to admit that I feel responsible to maintain what the ministers have said over these past couple nights, while contributing to the foundation that they have provided over the past couple nights. Tonight, however, I'm going to kind of gravitate more towards a relevancy side to our own lives and not get too technical or religious. I think that you guys have had enough of all this religious stuff, and now I want to kind of let all that religious stuff brew like a really good tea, and see how all of this is relevant into our lives. When I did some coursework on homiletics, we are often told that our job is to put the theology into the current situation, or if you are in kind of the praise and worship type of situation, our job is to give meaning and supplement to much of the songs that everyone is singing. I'm going to be doing the direct opposite. I'm going to give meaning to the theology in reference to all that you heard, kind of like turning the theology into the song. But don't worry, I am not going to sing. In the past couple months leading to preparing for all of this, you can ask Reverend Higa and Reverend Hasebe, the previous speaker, about how I've been suffering just mentally through all of this. It came to a point that I had a mental block and I couldn't even remember the word empathy, let alone spell it or even grasp the idea of what it was. It was even to the point that Reverend Higa even pointed out. Oh, David, you really having a problem with this, yeah? And as I reflect back, was this mental block my coping mechanism to deal with this problem of me and the concept of empathy? Or perhaps was signing up to be the last speaker my coping mechanism? Then that way, I could listen to everyone else and just when it came my turn, just go, yeah, yeah, and agree with everything. But then, I could get away with it, but it would be a disservice to all of you who have taken the time out of your busy schedules to come here every night to hear all of us. And really, I just truly appreciate all of this. To me, this is the very foundation of empathy. This connection between Reverend Higa, Reverend Hasebe, and I. Distress often motivates us to avoid, while empathy motivates us to help. That is the problem that I was dealing with as I was having a hard time. I was just in distress and unconsciously developed all of these coping mechanisms to avoid this. However, I have great people, great colleagues that have helped me. They saw a person in need, related through empathy. They put that empathy into action, and I was motivated and they were motivated to help me, even at the expense of now I'm going to be the butt of every joke every time I see Reverend Higa and Reverend Hasebe. And even now as we chat with each other every so often. So tonight, this talk is really a testament to them and the result of my journey into the respect that I have for them too, and how they have nurtured me over the past couple months, and how much I respect, or we have that respect for each other. It's really something that we don't see too much of in this world today. I do have to preface this talk, however. I just recently found out that one of my former students' wife, who was only 31, recently passed away from cancer and leaving 2 young daughters. So it's a little bit of emotional time for me right now. So first off, and I do know that some of the other ministers did talk about this, but I do want to re-emphasize that compassion and empathy are not the same thing. Okay, literally, compassion means to suffer with. It's an emotional movement that involves our heart in response to encountering suffering. Okay, how do we encounter suffering? In compassion, one genuinely recognizes pain, acknowledges the pain and its presence, and we don't avoid it. Okay, the Dharma explores this through the first noble truth, right? Life is suffering. We have to be able to acknowledge it, and we don't avoid it. We should not avoid it. We absolutely must acknowledge its presence. Oftentimes we have a hard time acknowledging that due to our, of course, ignorant Bomu mentality. We often are in denial and say, "Meh, everything is okay," really, when we're not. In existential theory, we say that pain, suffering, and grief is all a part of life, and that no one is immune to it. It's all a part of life. Compassion arises when one is confronted with another's suffering and feel motivated to help relieve that suffering. Empathy is, a term that describes a wide array of experiences. Generally, it's in one's ability, with deep roots in our brain, to imagine what someone else might be thinking or might be feeling. We're able to observe this behavior in mice and dogs. Today, we can go even further to say that there are 2 types of empathy, affective and cognitive. Affective empathy refers to the feelings and sensations that we feel in response to another person's emotions. Years ago when I was working in athletics, we often see this kind of empathy in fans. They see a player upset because they might have ran the play wrong, or they might have not caught a pass. So the player's frustration is mirrored in the fan as they mirror that frustration. You know, a good example of this is when I first started coaching volleyball. I remember the first game my middle had played, he was just full of anxiety. You could see it. It looked like he was going to pass out, throw up, vomit, whatever you want to think of. And his legs was just shaking unbearably. And one of his good friends that was sitting in the stands right in the back of me quickly picked up on this friend's anxiety. And then he too became full of stress. Okay, and then there's cognitive empathy. When we identify and understand other people's emotions. Probably a good example of this is when a lot of us as ministers, or I'm sure you've heard it, when we say that, oh, my pain is Buddha's pain, my happiness is Buddha's happiness, right? Buddha mirrors our emotions to make it Buddha's own emotion. The result is that the Buddha takes on our emotion. Okay? We can say that empathy can lead to compassion. And I do want to stress the word can here, okay? Research has shown that one can empathize with someone, but it doesn't mean that we will help the person in need. It is just merely a step one takes towards compassion, which sets the action of empathy, okay? So empathy can also lead people astray from moral values and overwhelm the emotional response that we have, and will definitely just get overwhelmed and walk away in fear by being just so overwhelmed by the emotional response of empathy. And I'm sure many of you have seen that in this pandemic, where people, like the nurses, right? They get so stressed out because they're working out of empathy and compassion, and they just get stressed out and leave. They quit. Okay. So how do we nurture empathy so that it doesn't stop? How do we make it so that empathy goes into compassionate means? Okay, it starts, and Reverend Hasebe had said this earlier, it really starts with the self. Yeah, as I stated before, you know, we have to acknowledge that we have pain and that we have suffering. Okay, so if you kind of imagine it, now we're using YouTube, right? In life, we press that little subscribe button so that we can get that alert to the latest on our pain and our suffering. We subscribe to it, acknowledge it, and that acknowledgement we start to understand, is the very component to our lives. You know, today, our world is just filled with so much pain and so much suffering. We have this systemic discrimination, hate, violence, and full-blown ignorance of just fellow sentient beings. While that is going on, people are actively acknowledging it by telling their stories, by capturing moments on their phones now. We saw this as a result of the young lady filming the George Floyd incident. In acknowledging that there is a problem, we put ourselves into their position. In 2 recent studies, teachers purposely induced empathy, and they saw that it led to compassion. In one instance, school taught of the struggles and the suffering of African Americans in a predominantly white community. This in turn reduced their feelings of prejudice towards African Americans and encouraged more interactions, interracial interactions. And in another study, researchers found that people that helped to rescue the Holocaust victims and their families, it showed that these rescuers developed empathy for the victims, and they encouraged their kids to be empathetic to others by telling their stories. This allowed their children to put empathy into action, which then became compassion, by reminding them to see things from other perspectives. And when you really think about that, that is the goal of Buddhism, right? In which we are able to see things from another's perspectives. It allows us to erase the I. the self becomes this link in Amida Buddha's golden chain of love, which reminds us to protect those who are weaker than myself, knowing that on what I do now develops the karmic conditions that will not only affect me, but are also affecting the people we're surrounded by. No link, no chain. No chain, there's no need for a link, right? So how does this all fit in with the respectful relationships that Reverend Higa and Reverend Hasebe and I have? And maybe this will stir up some thinking in all of you. Okay, in chapter 9 of Tannisho, there is a conversation that's going on between Yuenbo and Shinran, right? Yuenbo asks Shinran, hey, boss man, I have this great feeling of reciting Namo Amida Butsu, but it really doesn't do anything for me. Only a small, faint glimmer in my heart to want to dance with joy. How come I don't have this feeling of wanting to be born into Pure Land so quickly? And in response, Shinran says, "Brah, me too." And I also had this feeling that you are having. When I think about it, the fact that I don't rejoice in dancing in the air and dancing upon the earth, the more I realize that my birth is truly settled. It is my Bombu nature that suppresses my heart that should rejoice and keep me from rejoicing. But the Buddha knew that and said that the Buddha will save all sentient beings who are especially filled with blind passion, because that is the compassionate vow of other power. So yes, we can all agree that the saving power of the vow comes from the compassion of the Buddha. However, is Shinran showing Yuenbo compassion or empathy? Reverend Higa, Reverend Hasebe and I discussed this for quite a long time. And suddenly, all of us were perplexed. And so Reverend Hasebe talked about the difference in the context compassion and empathy has in Japanese. So we turned to the Japanese reading of the Tannisho to see what it was saying. Still, I was in a dead end. I approached some of the other ministers and some said Shinran was showing compassion. Some was saying he was showing empathy. So really now I ask you, with all that you guys heard in the past couple of days, I want you to reflect on it, okay? Reflect on it. I don't want to hear answers tonight, okay? So in this journey, you can see the path of how empathy turned into compassion in that they reacted to my pain and my suffering. And trust me, mentally, it was mental anguish. But, they didn't stop at, oh, Reverend David, you poor thing, or Reverend David, he's so stupid. Although, they could have, especially the last one, right? They reacted, however, in a way that my pain became their pain. And together we attempted to look at this to solve my little conundrum. In this way, there was this form of respect for each other. And now we know that if each one of us needed help, we have, or they have our respect to know that they can always call upon us. These are the kinds of stories that we need to keep sharing. And that is how we nurture, that is how we instill the concepts of respect and empathy. Okay, so after tonight, or at least, when I get home, I will probably be dancing with joy in air and on the earth when I finally have that opportunity to erase the word empathy off the wall of my study. This is not my study. I'm on vacation, so this is not my room. Although it is more of an ego thing for me, still the journey continues as now we continue to nurture the relationship that the three of us have. It's this thing about empathy is, and the problems I have might seem so small, and yet it haunted me. My ego prevented me from not grasping the concept of empathy. And, I know Reverend Uica is watching right now, and he's saying, well, can you tell me more? Why do you suppose this is happening? It's an inside joke that he can explain if you're ever curious. But yet it is a Dharma moment, or as Piper Toyama often refers to it as, this Nembutsu moment that is gifted to us from Amida Buddha. It is there that we just have to see it and acknowledge it. And that is where Namo Amida Butsu comes from. The first step is really to acknowledge that, yes, we are not okay. We are human after all. We have to be true to ourselves. Otherwise, that first noble truth, right? Life is not like a Burger King. You cannot have it your way. It's just a mere concept. Until we can acknowledge it and admit that it is part of our lives, then the rest of the Four Noble Truths, including the Eightfold Path, the primal vow, will not make sense to us all. It won't become relevant to us. We won't be able to change. However, the acknowledgement is just the first step. This pandemic, this systemic discrimination, this uneasy feeling that we have in this world today has made us take a real look at this first step. However, we need to have that self-love, that empathy for ourselves first in order to affect change in the world. The self, myself, is a good example. I was really uneasy, and you can ask them about tonight. Like I said, to the point that I just unconsciously, I developed unhealthy means to deal with all of this because I wanted to avoid this topic, even to the point where I couldn't remember the word. I had to write it on my wall. I could easily hide all of the problems I had from my peers, but that, of course, too, would not be healthy for me. This is another way we all can help nurture other people, fellow sentient beings. Often when we are at church, right, we are so into ourselves, we stay with the people that we're comfortable with, and we don't break down those barriers to truly practice or apply the teachings of the Buddha. The very meaning of Amida is wisdom and compassion, right? Venture out, hear the stories of others, be a mentor to the younger generations. You heard many times about respect and it being earned and not given for free. Nurturing really is how respect is earned. We don't run away from it. That is the crux of every support group. It's mentoring, acknowledging we all have problems and we are never alone. The Dharma makes us realize that it's really nothing new. It just takes time to see it and acknowledge it. Then empathy will lead to compassion, and compassion will lead to respect. And that respect for fellow sentient beings will allow us to work through all the craziness in the world and fulfill Shinran's aspiration of may peace and tranquility prevail the world. So thank you very much, everyone. Please join me with your palms put together in Gassho and let us rejoice in hearing the name of infinite wisdom and inconceivable compassion and recite the Nembutsu together. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Okay, thank you very much.
Reverend David, thank you very much. Your your message was fairly short, so we'll have a lot of time for questions and answers.
Oh no!
Right now there are no questions on the chat.
Thank
However,
goodness.
I have a question for you. Okay, we want to help others with good intention to relieve another person's suffering or pain. But what if the help is not wanted or even misguided?
For myself, if the help is not wanted, I just keep the conversation going, of, oh, how come, I cannot help you, or is there somebody maybe I can find to help you? Maybe it's a comfort level thing, or maybe like Reverend Hasebe said, knowing your limits. Maybe they might know you're limited, so maybe you cannot help them. So I just continue the conversation, and Reverend Blaine is just texting me right now, tell me more. And that's exactly what it is. If somebody tells me, I don't want your help, please tell me more. How come I cannot help you? What can I do? Can I refer you to someone else? That's still, we're nurturing them. And although we may not be able to help, maybe we can find the innermost reasons why. And maybe from there, we can help them. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, no more questions.
But leading into this, though, is now, you were able to come up with ideas of finding other ways to help that person by offering different services, or maybe offering to find someone else that can help that person. But, that's not something that regular people will think of, is being empathetic or being able to help someone. Does that take practice?
It does. It does take practice, right? And that's why I said right from the beginning, it starts with me. Another way you could look at it is, okay, if I was put in that situation, how would I respond? Yeah, put yourself in their shoes. And so, it does take practice. It takes a little bit different frame of mind. And when you think of, the life of Shinran like that, that's what his life is about. Having that change in thinking. Yeah. And so that is what the teachings are trying to tell us, that because all of our greed, anger, suffering is prohibiting us from truly living our life. Truly living our life will be, right, connecting with other people.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Maybe these question and answer is more better than my talk itself.
Well, right now it's a conversation between the two of us. I'm waiting for more questions.
No need. No need.
But, when you talk about empathy, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, would that be an exercise that you can do rather than thinking from your own viewpoint, but trying to put yourself in the other person's perspective?
Do you remember in the 80s, right? Bank of Hawaii had that commercial with Harry and Myra. And who was putting up the Harry? Harry was putting up on the wall a pair of slippers, right? And he said, a pair of slippers reminding us to put yourself in their shoes to see what they need, what they want, and how we can help. Right? To me, that is what it is. That's the answer right there. And sometimes it does take practice. So, having small reminders like that, putting slippers on the wall to remind us to put ourselves into other people's shoes, it is a good start. It can help us to remember that kinds of things.
So I need to invest in some slippers to hang on my wall then.
Right, and when you really think about that, right, putting yourself in other people's shoes extends in every religion, right? Every religion has some kind of teaching like that, right? So yes, it's important, and yes, we need to be able to practice, acknowledge it, and apply it into our own lives.
No, I think it's nice to say empathy and respect, but how many times does your ego get in the way because what you think is best for someone else, right, or how you are going to relieve someone's suffering I mean, sometimes it becomes inverted, that it becomes you instead of them.
If you can acknowledge that, that is the very important first step. That, oh my goodness, I was just so into myself that I didn't hear what this person said. To be able to acknowledge that is a very important thing. That is what starts you on this trend from moving into the self, into empathy, into compassion.
We have a question, and that might be relative to what we just discussed. How would you show empathy for someone that doesn't wear a mask, especially in these COVID times where the numbers keep going up and everyone's fearful? How would you show empathy for that person that doesn't wear a mask?
I just walk away. No. I shouldn't say that. What is when you really think about it, right? Why? I don't know how I want to put this without sounding so mean. You don't want to start something, right? So, maybe you just acknowledge and say, hello or something and move away. I mean, that's what I do.
Keep your social distance.
Yeah.
Along with this question about the mask wearing, how do you in today's health crisis express empathy and respect for people who do not want to be vaccinated?
For myself, and I don't know how the others feel, other ministers feel. I don't know how what Hongwanji's position is going to be, but for me, it's your choice. Okay, whether you want to do it or not, but it's with the understanding also that if you do or if you don't, you have to be. You are going to be liable for the consequences. And that's where nurturing our relationships with others and able to communicate that really helps. This healthcare crisis is splitting us down the middle, whether you want it or not. To me, as long as we understand that I'm not forcing you, or hey, you shouldn't, or that there's middle line of if it's your choice. To me, if we understand that part, and I know I'm going to probably get scoldings after this, but to me, that is my feeling. And maybe I should preface this. What I just said is not the official position of the Hongwanji mission of Hawaii or Hongwanji, Nishi Hongwanji, Hongwanji Ha.
In relation to what you're saying about being more understanding about the person's choices,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of our internal struggles, and we question and we may vilify people who do not wear a mask or refuse to get vaccinated. So a question was brought up that says, is self-reflection a good starting point for us to better understand this situation and to be more empathetic?
That's a very good question. So, one of the things that I'm studying now is something called post-traumatic growth. And one of the first important things or one of the first building blocks to it is self-reflection, because like I said, through self-reflection, we acknowledge what's going on. We acknowledge the trauma, and we understand that trauma happens to everyone. Nobody is immune to it. So wait, what was the other part of the question?
Oh, it's like self-reflection on your feelings of that you may have conflicts with people, not wearing a mask or not deciding to get vaccinated. How do you reconcile your feelings about that, negative feelings?
One of the things that we learn from the what sutra is that I can't think of it. I'm going to one more mental block, but it says, right, just because this person says it, you don't have to follow. Just because this, don't follow. Just you have to do your research, right? To me, that is what needs to be done, and be able to express your feelings in a non-confrontational conversation. And that too takes practice of self-reflecting. Okay, I know my viewpoint, and I'm not going to get overwhelmed with the other person's feelings. So if we can be able to have that non-confrontational kind of conversation, I think that is a good start.
So with self-reflection, it's
Thank you, Blaine.
internal.
Kalama Sutra.
Okay. I mean, what's the difference between that and being mindful?
Okay, so a lot of the times when we use words like empathy, we can kind of intertwine it with mindfulness, right? You kind of see what I'm trying to say?
Give examples.
Okay, so a lot of times, how do I want to use this? I don't want to go into Sanskrit kind of thing, but like mindful eating, mindful meditation, like that. What's going on? We're reflecting into the inside, right? What emotion am I going through now? What does this, when I eat this, what kind of memories do I have of this? How am I feeling when I'm eating this? What is the texture of this, right? We start to focus on ourself now. And really, when you think about it, compassion is like that, or it has to start from there, in which we have to be compassionate to ourselves first, or we have to be empathetic for ourselves first.
We have a question here in the chat, and it asks, I think you are right that we have a choice, but we are responsible for the choices we make and the ramifications that arises. Mm-hmm. Don't you think stories like that should be shared, may help people's decision?
I believe so, right? But then what are we hearing? We're hearing more scare tactics and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But if we can have this kind of conversation or share these kinds of thoughts, I think then I think more of us will start to understand.
When you mention scare tactics, I noticed on the news that it's very predominant that with the COVID numbers, they always show a hospital scene or a medical someone in the medical profession that says, we have this many patients in the ICU who were not vaccinated, and our numbers are predominantly 99% non-vaccinated people. I mean, that I would say is a subtle scare tactic to try to convince people that who are not vaccinated to get the vaccine. Mm-hmm. So what is our stand as far as this gentle coercion that is happening?
I think like I said, do your research. Just because somebody says it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. I mean, we're seeing this all over social media. We're seeing this all over the news. We have to be able to do our own research to understand what is truly the problem or what is truly going on. And yet, we still have to be mindful of these healthcare professionals.
Well, I don't see any other questions.
Oh, thank goodness.
But I don't want to get you off the spot yet. We have a lot of time. So, you talked about trying to develop or empathy, and from empathy we develop compassion and respect. Is this something that is a process that has a step-by-step procedure? I mean, what do you need to do first to develop yourself to the point that you can become empathetic, and then from there develop compassion? Is there a formula, or is there something that just comes from within, trying to understand the Buddha nature?
Okay, so yeah, to me, it's like one of those charts, right? And you come into this situation, we start communicating, and like Reverend Hasebe said, right, beginning, we have to know what our limits. If we know that it's beyond our limits, we don't abandon them. We tell them, how can I refer you to somebody? And then from there, like I said, empathy should not stop there. Many times we feel sorry for somebody and we just go, oh, poor thing. But the next step is, okay, oh, poor thing, what can I do? What do I need to do to help this problem? And so it is a step process that does take steps, does take practice, and it does involve understanding yourself, your limitations. And when you
have a handbook,
what do you mean?
The step-by-step process.
I think for each of us, it's going to be different because, it's sometimes we are just doing off the cuff, going into a situation. And we just, sometimes it's not a one size fit all. It's something that we just have to work through. Post-traumatic workbook.
Okay. Well, since there's no other questions being asked, I will get you off the hook and finish up. Let's wrap this up. I really enjoyed our conversation together and your message. It gives us a lot of things to think about. And so we want to thank everyone for attending this evening's Dharma session with Reverend Hasebe and Reverend Fujimoto, and we hope you enjoy them. If you missed any of the Dharmathon talks, all the 5 evening sessions are available for repeat viewing on YouTube. And if there are any further questions that you may have or think about after this session concludes, please direct them to the Buddhist Study Center at kwong@honpahigh.org, and your question will be forwarded to the minister. Or if you have any comments regarding the Summer Dharmathon series, please contact the Buddhist Study Center using the same email. We thank you, our viewers, the minister speakers, our moderators, and especially to the Buddhist Study Center Dharmathon Planning Committee, who provided this opportunity for us to learn more about the Dharma. I want to conclude our Dharmathon series by wishing you all a good night and mahalo.